Hello everyone, my name is Michaela Kathleen, and for today's video I'm going to be doing the Create the Perfect Book Challenge. I first saw this over on Murphy Napier's channel, so I will link her video down below. But basically, this challenge is going to be having a bunch of different categories of things in books, like characters or world building, etc. And for each one you have to pick an author to write that part of your book, and it all comes together to create your perfect book. And some of these categories are pretty fantasy leaning, but I'm going to be picking books from all sorts of categories. But jumping right in, the first one is tone. And the author I'm going to pick to set up the tone of my book is John Green. I love his style of writing, and there's just a certain something to his books that I love. And there's something in the Fault in Our Stars movie that just doesn't quite translate, even though it's a very good adaptation, and I feel like it's the tone. Even though there are a lot of direct quotes, there's just something about reading his words that evoke a certain feeling. Next up is characters. What author do you want to be crafting the characters in your novel? And I'm going to go with David Arnold. I love all of the characters so much in Kids of Appetite. That's kind of one of my favorite parts of this book, is how much I like all of the characters. And so I think I would like him to craft the characters in this perfect pretend book that I'm making. I will note that most authors, I don't read multiple books by them, so a lot of these I'm just going based on the one book that I've read by the author. Next, getting into kind of a fantasy element of this book is magic system. Who do you want to write the magic system for your book? Assuming it's a fantasy book, I guess. And for this one, I'm going with Christopher Paolini. I feel like a lot of magic systems are kind of mostly explained through training montages, which some people just always dislike training montages and find them boring no matter what. Other people love them. I'm a person who sometimes I can be bored by a training montage, sometimes I can really enjoy it. And the inheritance cycle, I love all of the training montages in this series. There are kind of a lot sprinkled throughout the series, from the first one when he's traveling with Brom, to his training montage in Ellesmere, and I find them all really interesting. I especially find the one in Ellesmere to be very interesting. That's probably my favorite part of the second book, is just Aragon being in Ellesmere, learning about magic. So that was kind of my barometer for a magic system that I really like, is if I enjoy the training that the character receives. Next up is villains. Who do you want to craft your villains? And I'm not actually a big villain person. I don't usually find them super compelling. I feel like a lot of times we don't get to know the villains super well because they're not the protagonist, so we don't often get to see from their point of view. But one villain that I really did enjoy reading about was Scythe Goddard from the book Scythe by Neal Shusterman. So I'm going with Neal Shusterman. I found his villain's perspective very interesting to read about, and I appreciated that we got his villain's perspective. Next up is hero. Who do you want to write your protagonist? And for this one, I'm going with Jodi Lynn Anderson. Tiger Lily is one of the most compelling heroes that I've read. A lot of times heroes can be a little bit flat so that readers can kind of just put themselves in that position, but Tiger Lily has a lot of depth, a lot of personality, and she's really her own character, and she's probably the most interesting character in the story. Again, a lot of times the main character is not the most interesting character. Almost nobody likes Harry the best from Harry Potter, for example. But this is a case where the hero really is the most interesting character. Next up is action. Who do you want to write your action sequences? And for this one, I'm going with Scott Westerfeld. The Uglies is probably one of the most fun series for me to read because of all the action. It's so fast-paced and fun. He also does really well with action in the Zeros trilogy over here. And so yeah, I just like reading Scott Westerfeld action sequences anytime, because generally I'm not a big action person. Don't Don't really care if the book has a ton of like fight scenes or action sequences, but these are ones where I really enjoy it. Next up is plot. Who writes a well-drawn plot? And for me, I've got to go with J.K. Rowling. Girl can write a plot. Her plots are always come together so well. There's always a lot of mystery, a lot of strings to follow, and so always enjoy a plot from her. Next up is world building. Which author do you want to build the world that your story is taking place in? And for this one, I'm going with Kendar Blake. One of my favorite parts of the Three Dark Crowns series was the island and the atmospheric, moody backdrop that the whole series has. I also enjoyed how she built up the history and the traditions of the island, how her magic system works, which is kind of a part of world building, even though it was a separate category here. And so yes, I think Kendar Blake would build a good world for this theoretical novel. Next up is romance. Who gives you all the feels? And for me, that is Rainbow Rowell. I'm not a big romance reader. I don't typically care as much about the romance as the plot or the characters themselves, but Rainbow always does really good with her romances, especially here in attachments. She makes you really care about if the romance is gonna work out or not. And then the final category is prose, and for this one I'm going with Marcus Zusak. Man can write a sentence. I think his writing is just really engaging and deep and interesting. I really like the concepts that are put just into even just individual sentences and the way he goes about expressing his ideas. So yes, I think I would pick Marcus Zusak to kind of do the prose. So yes, I would use the various elements of these books to all come together into one big super book to create my perfect book. I hope you enjoyed watching kind of my creation of my own perfect book. And now onto the quote for today's video, which is from the author I chose to create my magic system, Christopher Paolini. And it's a quote from Angela from the second book, Eldest. And it goes, she's doomed. You're doomed. They're all doomed. She cackled, doubling over, then straightened abruptly. Notice, I didn't specify what kind of doom. So no matter what happens, I predicted it. How very wise of me. Thanks for watching. Remember, words matter.